Welcome to Jumpstart's monthly webinar series, today on building a system that works even on your worst days. My name is Rain Elder. I am a deal flow analyst here at Jumpstart, overseeing and connecting small business clients with opportunity, that strives to provide you with access to knowledge and resources to really make your small business bigger and better. If you want to learn more about Jumpstart, feel free to visit our website to explore some of our other educational opportunities, along with workshops, other webinars, and just a series of other things that will be very beneficial to small businesses as well as tech companies. So, without further ado, allow me to introduce our presenting subject matter expert today, Vic Ng of Viking Sales Consultants. Vic is the founder and head coach of Viking Sales Consultants, a company he started after several decades of success in the business world as an entrepreneur, salesperson, and business executive, as well as a sales manager. He has worked in multiple disciplines where he has been routinely recognized as a top sales performer. He has achieved extraordinary success while continuously going against the status quo in an attempt to dispel the myth about what really makes a salesperson most effective. He is experienced public speaker, able to attract and engage attendees at seminars, online events, and via his consulting business. So, Vic, whenever you're ready, we welcome you to take over.
I am ready. Thank you for the introduction. I'm nodding my head as you're talking and then remembering, I think I wrote that. So, of course, I agree with everything you said. But modesty aside, hey, I've done some things, and that's why I think I'm qualified to be here. Welcome back. This is part 2 of our webinar series, but don't worry. If you weren't here for part 1, you'll still be just fine. What a better way to spend lunch than talking about sales? So gather up your Lunchables, your pizza, your sub sandwich, your sensible salad, and let's talk sales. Just a little more about why I am the one to talk to you today. I spend my days consulting with, coaching, and advising business owners and salespeople. I see the same stories, the same patterns, the same sales lessons bubble up day after day. I'm here to share with you my observations, as well as stories from my own experience as a salesperson and business owner. By the way, behind me, you'll see records. This is also the headquarters for my record store operations, Viking Records, located in Cuyahoga Falls. So for today's session, I promise you some key takeaways, down-to-earth stories, metaphors that may or may not get mixed, a lot of analogies, and most importantly, some core concepts that I know you can take with you and apply to your own businesses. I hope you'll have fun. But first, let's get serious. And I want to check in with Rain. Rain, we good? Everybody hearing me? Looking good? Or, well, as good as we can. I'll assume that we're fine. Okay. Sales, as magical as it seems, can be systemized no differently, I believe, than any other part of your business. Your operations, no doubt you have systems, processes. Is your sales the same? Your finance and accounting department, hopefully, it's a well-oiled machine, but sales, again, often it's viewed as something unique and different. My mission is to show how easy sales can be when you have the proper framework and lens from which to look at it. Best of all, it leads to growth, allows for scalability, and when it's time to sell or hand off your business, it's sustainable and it's valuable. Okay. So you all know the webinar you signed up for, but let's be clear on our goal. Building systems that work even on your worst days. But let me explain the concept behind that so we all know what I'm hoping to have achieved by the end of it. So obviously, we all have good days. We all have bad days. Now, hopefully, there are plenty of parts to your job and your business that you're so comfortable doing that even on your worst day, you can get things done. But when it comes to sales, what do we often hear? I'm not feeling it today. I'm going to stay in the office. I can't go meet with them. You go instead. Hold my calls, cancel my appointments. So it's not that no one wants to land a new client or provide a new solution to someone that needs it. It's just that for most people, doing anything sales related feels different. It feels like it takes that extra oomph. I'm here to tell you that for the clients I've seen making it happen the best, even those who started with, I don't want to do sales, I hate sales, sales can become a process like no other, that even when that creative spark isn't there that day, is what I'm trying to say, that it changes nothing. It's a process that, if followed, gets results. And what else does it do? it builds confidence in the sales process. You know what to do, you know what to say, and what's expected. There's no winging it. So, example, last week I had the flu, or was it the week before? Anyway, still, while I was laying in bed, I was able to spend my 10 to 15 minutes that day doing a few sales activities. I was able to close a deal with just one email that was already queued up and ready to go. I was also able to schedule a few appointments with just a couple text messages that weren't from out of the blue and took no real creative work on my part. I didn't have to convince anyone to do anything. I was following my process. And think of it this way, I was able to punch in, clock in, do the work in a matter of minutes, punch right out. So stay tuned. I'll share some of the tools that made that so easy for me to do. All right. I repeat myself a lot. So if you're here before, get used to it. But here's a theme. Let's make sure we all agree why we would want to do any work now to make less work later. As I always pose to my clients, you have a choice. Sales can either be a visit to the land of joy, and yes, that entails systems and processes, but it also results in scalable growth, less work, more success. Or you can live in the land of disappointment. It's chaos, it's winging it, it's contacts that ghost you, lost opportunities. Rhetorical question at this point. Where would you rather spend your time? All right. And then one other little thing, not trying to brag, but set context of why I got to where I'm at. I'm just some guy. I realize that. But I'm also a guy who's essentially on his fourth startup. My first one, as you can see on the left there, worked, but it took way too long. 3.5 years to get to 3 million annualized revenue. The second time on the right there went much better. 15 months to get to 5 million. These were both in the same industry, providing exactly the same service. The second one, the company sold or technically merged, and then put me and my new team on a course to even bigger and better things with revenue in the tens of millions of dollars. And as I kept saying to myself, man, if I knew then what I know now, that's why I do what I do. And that's why we're doing this webinar. I want to help you find a better way there. You are a driver on a road. Let's build a better road. Okay. So what happens when a sale doesn't happen, or what is really happening behind the scenes? This is the root of it all. I've seen it from every angle across many, many industries, working with lots of different sales teams. This visual here explains nearly all lost or stalled sales. And again, if this is a repeat, stay tuned. We're getting to some new stuff. But the three reasons. Number one, they were never going to be a client. You're barking up the wrong tree. You're counting on your ability to persuade and convince, and it's just not going to happen. Number two, you're talking to the wrong point of contact. We're going to talk about decision makers in a little bit. That's what that's about. Number three, you didn't follow your own process. So to elaborate a little more, now, if you spend all your time knocking on doors, it's eventually going to happen. That was me with my first startup. But because most teams spend too much energy trying to convince people that they're the solution, they end up living in that land of disappointment, not the land of joy. As I already said, talking to the wrong point of contact leads to poor outcomes. And I'll give you a hint. Let's talk a little bit about that. If you've ever heard a contact tell you something like this, hey, Vic, I just need you to understand I'm the one who's going to be making the decision on all of this, then you are 100% guaranteed to be talking to someone who does not make economic decisions for that company. Because who here as a business owner has ever had to tell someone that I'm in charge? You don't. It doesn't happen. As for process, so number three, you didn't follow your own process. Hang on, I'll lay out a basic framework for you. It's not complicated. It's the opposite. I like to say selling is easy. It just takes a little bit of work to keep it that way. So quick story, and I'm going to tell more than a few during the next hour. As I was preparing this presentation, someone came to my front door. The person introduced himself saying he was from a roofing company, and I could tell he was going right into a script. That's fine. I applaud scripts. He said, I'm in the neighborhood, and I'm wondering if you know how old your roof is. It's a great question, because for most people, it'll lead to the fact that they either don't know, then there's more conversation, or maybe they know it's time to do something. And it's better than saying, hey, knock, knock, your roof looks terrible. So it's not a bad approach. But I don't think he even looked at my roof. I know this because I have a tile roof, which means it's 108 years old. It came with the house in 1918. So without being rude, I answered his question. I said, it's over a century old. He didn't know quite where to go. I could tell. He's like, wait a minute. So he just went to his next question, which is, when would you plan on replacing it? Probably, like I said, the next line in the script. But knowing he doesn't know how this type of roof works, I had to explain that if I do the maintenance right, it's going to last another century. So then I asked him, do you all do architectural roof work? Because I'd be interested in having someone else who could do maintenance on it. Anyway, I could tell at that point he's out of his element, and he just asked if he could send a rep out. I repeated my question, do you guys even do this kind of work? And he didn't know the answer. So he kind of said, have a nice day, and he left. So the truth, number one on the screen you see, I was never going to be a client. Any energy he spent was just taking him to the land of disappointment. So the point here for y'all, you need to have a basic understanding of who your target audience is before you knock on the door and what basic setup and needs they're going to have. In this case, look at the roof. If it's not fitting what you do, move on. Okay, another reason sales fail that's not on the screen is due to a lack of confidence. Clients that I take on are often saying things to me like, I don't know how to sell. I don't want to sell. I'm not sure who to call or what to say. These are lies they tell themselves. Not wanting to sell is not the same as not knowing how to sell. So I help primarily with confidence by building these systems, but I guess it's an end result that's always there. So most of what I'm going to share with you today brings, and here I'm getting somewhere with this, it brings you clarity and understanding. And with clarity and understanding comes results. So here's the first lesson. When you know exactly what you do and who needs it, you can see your prospects from far away. I like to use this analogy. They glow in the dark. You can't miss them. And what happens is, I see this all the time, your next new client has been right under your nose all along, and you didn't know it. Okay, let's move on. I mentioned ghosting. I know this is a pain that's ubiquitous in the sales world. So I want to share this in this way. Do you get ghosted? Because it's weird. Usually it seemed like everything was going fine, and then they suddenly disappeared. Early in my career, I got ghosted a lot. I still do occasionally, but I wouldn't call it a chronic problem anymore. Why? Because, first bullet point on this screen, why do people ghost? They're in over their head and they're embarrassed. I am careful nowadays to only target the real decision maker. Anyone lower than that needs to get permission from someone else. If what they want to do gets shot down, or they're told that's not where you're supposed to be spending your time, why are you doing this? Then it ends there. And they will often go and hide their head in the sand. They're embarrassed. Number two, you tried to convince them. If you did that, you made things a little salesy and weird and awkward. Why? The best salespeople don't find themselves doing a heavy sell ever, almost ever, but I'll say ever. They're not trying to convince people to do something they don't want to do. As I said a little bit ago, if you know exactly what you do, who needs it, and how they benefit, they glow in the dark. You can see them from far away. But maybe, per number 3 bullet point, they really, really like you. Now, how's that related to ghosting? Well, they like you. If they didn't, it'd probably be easier for them to tell you to go away, and they probably wouldn't have gone down the road with you like they have. What's worse is they really, really like you, and they may still be trying to do what you asked and failing, or they just don't know how to break it to you that this isn't going to happen. So, people, you don't suck at sales. You're just not doing it as well as you could be. All right, you with me? Moving on, moving on, moving on. Okay, as I said, well, let's look at it this way. Let's continue the subject a little. Forgot what slide I had next. Before I dive into the main event and set up the framework for the rest of the webinar. So how do you find the right decision maker for your business, since we're talking about that? No surprise to hear me say, it's easier than you think. So no matter what you're selling and who you are selling to, number 1 on this list, economic decision maker, is your person ideally every time. It's just not always possible to get to them, but this is the person who actually controls the money. Now, stay with me. Don't make assumptions. That doesn't mean the person who owns the budget. That's 2 different things. I'll give you a hypothetical example. Let's say there's a high level director of human resources that you need to get to who has a huge budget they can spend on training or safety initiatives and recruiting. Millions of dollars maybe is available to them. For years, they've done a great job managing these funds, selecting vendors, awarding contracts, and doing great work for their company. Okay, sounds like a decision maker. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, let's say, things aren't so great for this company. There's been economic pressure through the years, building, eroding profit margins, overseas competition, tariffs, all kinds of issues that they've been aware of. You're this director of HR, but it hasn't been their primary focus. The rest of the management team seem to think they would figure it out. So this person's just doing what they do. But let's say this was a private company. And what's happened now is they've decided, decision's been made, they need to close a factory and outsource all the manufacturing elsewhere. And with that, everything that I described that this person has been spending their energy administering and awarding contracts for. So this is a big, difficult decision affecting hundreds of employees, and obviously every relationship HR has in place. Every vendor who's walking around thinking they've got an evergreen forever account is about to take a visit to the land of disappointment. So things are going to slowly change, and if your HR is your point of contact, they might not understand some of the decisions and budget cuts that's been going on because the owner, whoever knew, didn't want to announce any of this yet. So in the meantime, you're scratching your head wondering, something's going on. I just can't put my finger on it. So that story is really just about information and awareness of what's going on. But let's dream for another minute. What if your point of contact was that owner instead? What if you had a solution that would have changed everything? What if you knew how they could continue their operations, keep the jobs intact, if only they took advantage of some service or product that you have been trying to offer your point of contact for years? If that was what they needed and you let yourself limit what you do to the wrong point of contact, then that's on you. Don't do that. Of course, had the director of HR had all the info, they would have been open to your solution as well, but most organizations aren't run very democratically. Not everyone knows what's going on in the big picture. Okay, hope that makes sense. So, a little bit more to continue. Enough about the economic decision maker. So, I think I painted a picture. Let's move on to the next one. And these are just abstract terms, but I call it a technical buyer. In my last example, this would be the HR director. They can make decisions using the budget and the authority that they've been given. But for anything outside of that, their hands are tied, and they probably won't even know it. And they certainly won't admit it to you if you ask. They'll say, Vic, I make all the decisions here. They're what's called an agent of limited authority, as I've heard it called. My favorite metaphor, because I like metaphors and analogies, and I don't know which is which sometimes. So, anyway, they're an exotic fish swimming in a beautiful aquarium. They own that world, but they have no idea what's going on outside the aquarium. Think about that. All right. The third bullet point is order placer. A better term for you might be a buyer. Call them a paper shuffler. Call them a go-between. I'm not diminishing their important role in the organization, but they are a day-to-day person who makes different kinds of decisions daily, and they get things done. This is who your operations team, and if you are your operations team, this is who you're working with and who you may think runs the show, especially if you've been working with this company a long time. You might have forgotten where it all started. This is your ipso facto decision maker day to day. But for the bigger decisions, the vendor decisions, the economic decisions, they're very far removed. For most salespeople, that line of where you start at a company and where you sell is between technical buyer and order placer. If you go below that, I'll just say it, you're kidding yourself if you think you can sell something that is lasting and different and priced the way you want it to be. It's often match the price or do a lower price, or service wise, can you do the same thing? If it's different, I don't know, we're getting into weird territory. And again, I don't want to diminish the capabilities and creativity and the authority that is given to people. But overall, I hope you're seeing this is a pattern that I've just seen play out over and over again. And when I was somebody's competitor, maybe on this call I was getting maybe different results, probably different results than you would have liked. And I was taking business. I hate to say it, but that's how it works because I was offering something better and different, maybe at a higher price. That's the most insulting of all because I was going to the right people and getting the attention in the right way. All right. Um, so if you sell to this order placer, day to day person, and then try to climb the ladder to the others, good luck. They don't like that at all. They'll also say, Vic, here to this broken record comment, I need you to know I make all the decisions here. So, all right. The end user, the fourth level, I guess, is easy. They use or are affected by your product or service. If things aren't going well, they feel the pain more than anyone. If it's going well, no problem. Yes, you can sell to an end user. You can sell to multiple end users by getting their feedback and learning what could be done better. But if you do this, you'd better be connected to the economic decision maker. Because, and if you started with the end user, you better have a reasonable explanation why you've been stirring the pot with that person's team, because that's what it's going to look like. So the best strategy is to start with the economic decision maker. And if for some reason they're not truly aware of the pains that exist, but you've opened their eyes a little, ask their permission to do what I call traveling a circle through the team, gather information and feedback so you can report back to them. It's a tricky proposal, but I've pulled it off many times. And now we're into pure coaching strategy things, which I try to steer from, but I wanted to give you an example of how, even with that framework, it makes everything easy. But sometimes, depending on who you're selling to, it can get a little advanced, I should say. All right. And the last one is the coach. They might be a high level decision maker for some other commodity. So listen to that. They might be a technical buyer somewhere else. There's someone else's technical buyer or economic decision maker, even. Or they might be the lowest level person in the building. It doesn't matter. What it means is, and I think you know, but let's just make sure we're clear, they have information and they're willing to help you out, especially if they happen to be a relative or a friend of a friend, because trust transfers through introductions. Um, and if you ask for help, often that phrase is magical. You will get it. So the last thing about economic decision makers, if you're selling to a huge company, and you might have been thinking this as we're talking, as I was talking, things shift downwards slightly. You're not going to get to the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, most likely for what you're selling and in the way that you're selling. But there are people who have been given true P&L authority or ownership of a specific facility, commodity, product line. If you know how to see it right, you will see what I'm talking about. All right, let's move on. Okay, here is the framework that I've been speaking of. This is the, sorry, I'm clicking on something. All right, this is the framework through which we view sales. I don't bring any magic formula or miracle cure or a sales system even. But what I do, as I said, is provide clarity, understanding. And I guess I should add terminology so that you label something and we can all talk in a common language, you, your salespeople, your colleagues. So I bring that. And the way to do that is understand the moving parts of how things work. This is it. Who doesn't like a good F word? And the framework is a fifth F word. So the framework leads to the four F's, as I call them. Not a system, just a framework, a way to look at it. Number one is the focus. I've talked already about that, and we're going to talk a little more because it's so important. Knowing what you offer, who can benefit, how they benefit, which leads into the pains and the differentiators. It's not complicated, but that right there is your identity. And it makes doing commercials easy. And if you're thinking, when do I do commercials? Well, if you've ever met anyone who could be a prospective customer or even a friend, what are you doing these days, Vic? If you can't answer that, that's just weird. I'm just going to say that. That's just weird. And I run into this a lot. Like, why can't you tell me what you do? Please tell me what you do. Who are you? Why can't you tell me? Why are you not willing to tell me? All right. Sorry, I'm being silly. Okay. The next thing is funnel. How to strategically engage a prospect, guide them through the sales process to make it easier for you. But for them, it's a customer experience. It's not somebody getting the old cram down. Let me push you down my funnel, convince you, persuade you. None of that. Foundation is simple. These are tools that manage the funnel and keep the focus. And I'm going to share with you in a little while a standard toolkit. I have yet to see anyone who doesn't need each of those things in your tool belt, or whatever analogy you want to use there. They're tools. But that's what the foundation is. And then the fourth one is flexibility. I added that later. It's me when I had nothing but automotive clients one time and I survived. It is, and I should define it, it's making sure your business is not going to be disrupted in a major way by outside influences beyond your control. We all went through a pandemic together. And a lot of us realized we were not built for that. Some of us were. There's no crystal ball to see those kind of things coming. But the crystal ball you can see is the company I think of, I know very well, who almost exclusively sold to the federal government up until a few years ago. And I don't have to tell you that the dynamic changed. Budget cuts, a different way of viewing things. And I mentioned automotive. That was an easy one. I'm old enough and to see lots of things, but 2008 wasn't that long ago for me. And it still left scars for a lot of people, to servicing an industry that just went through a complete upheaval. So, all right, enough said. None of this constitutes a selling system. I don't know why I keep saying that. Maybe I need to convince me and not you. But anyway, it's not about convincing people. It's not about fixing what I call those downstream problems. I suck at sales. I don't know what to say. Instead, it's about fixing the root causes upstream instead. Even if a founder or an owner of a business doesn't want to do sales, it doesn't mean that they can't, and it doesn't mean that they shouldn't, at least in the beginning. Pave the road, going into an analogy here, for the next drivers you hire, and it makes growing much, much easier and consistent and valuable when it's time to sell or transfer the business. All right, I think enough said about that. Let's dive in a little deeper on each one. And I'm going to give you some examples. Focus. Who are you? What do you do? Who needs it? What's the pains you're solving? What differentiates you from your competition? And said succinctly there, just start with what do you offer, who can benefit, and how they benefit is key. And a very smart person who may be on this call, who I know in marketing, says that knowing this really defines what you don't do. What a wonderful way to look at that. Thank you, Adam, if anybody knows who I'm talking about. I don't mean to be vague, but I don't know what the rules are here. Anyway, he's a very smart person. Knowing what you do clearly defines what you don't do. So I know this sounds simple, but for you, take a long look in the mirror, especially if you're encountering sales obstacles. Is it easy to convey, like I said, to someone you've just met what you do? Do you know exactly who your target audience is? Do they glow in the dark? Do you know why you're the ideal solution for them? Are you trying to be too much right now? I'll talk more about that here, but let's talk now. Eventually, this is simple. You may be able to do more. And I know that some of you might fear that limiting yourself today limits yourself later, but that's not how it works. Limiting yourself now gives you focus. As you evolve and grow, you can expand or change, but if you try to be everything to everyone now, where are you going to go? The land of disappointment, and so will your clients. Let's take Amazon. I love big cliched examples because they're powerful and easy to think of. We all know that what was being built all along, we all know now, what was being built all along was a logistics revolution, a way to move products around the world in a way that is not only lightning fast, but convenient. And this has changed retail sales forever. But at the beginning, they were just a bookstore online. Do you remember that? It's really hard to remember. But they were an online bookstore. That's all they sold for quite a while. You can do the same with your business. That's why we have 1 year and 5 year business plans. Supposedly Honda, I think it's Honda, or is it Toyota? I just know, coming from the Japanese manufacturing techniques, probably both of them, written into the rules for that type of business, have a 500-year plan. Isn't that crazy? A 500-year plan. Think big, though. Think big all you want, but break it into actionable, immediate steps that your clients today will understand and buy today. All right, if you do this right, as I will always say, your prospects will glow in the dark. Can you see your ideal clients today from far away? Can you easily describe to someone who you'd like to work with so they can connect you to someone else? If you can't, that's going to create growth problems and sales obstacles. I'll give you a hint. If what you do involves the word anyone, you might want to try better. I know for myself, I was taught when I started in sales, which was in the temporary staffing industry decades ago, that anyone could be a potential client and that we could also fill any type of position. That may be true, but think about it. There's some industries that our services that we were doing, whatever it was, and I started and they were already there, were better geared towards some type of job openings because we were doing it already better than others. Now, if you're wondering why you would then lean into that and sell that, think in terms of inventory. If I have a room full of applicants for a specific job opening that's profitable and in demand, then by definition, that means there are other clients who could use these same candidates. Why would I want to ignore what I have available to send to work now by working on whatever position comes my way, which would mean having to start from ground zero? So back into your heads, it may look different, it may feel different, and it may seem harmless, but you're doing the same thing. There's only 1 minute, one instance for you to be doing something. And if you're distracted or fooling yourself like we all do, that you can multitask, it doesn't work that way. Instead, back then, I should have found other clients that needed exactly what I already have to offer right now. And that's what I did, but it took me a long time. If I'd only known then what I know now. Let's take my current sales consulting business as an example, Viking Sales Consultants. I thought I knew when I started who I could help, who would want and need what I had to offer. I knew exactly what I was offering, by the way, so there's no problem there. But I probably skewed for my ideal client way bigger size-wise than what it ended up being. I didn't see that at the beginning until I did, but I learned that what I do is much more conducive to one-on-one in-person consulting and most likely with a small team. Now, I'm not ruling out the other things for someday. And in fact, I might be there. I figured out how that would work and doesn't lose what I do and the feeling that I'm giving my clients today. So next, alongside my current business, I'm going to start scaling into a different area that's more group oriented. And maybe this is an example. But today, right now, this isn't my ideal client profile just yet. So as I walk around now, I know what to watch for and listen for that make my ideal prospects glow in the dark. I'll be in a room, I'll hear one or two phrases, and I'll know that may be someone who I might want to talk to. Now, I don't pounce on them. We'll talk about that when we get to the next F, the funnel. But my point is, at least I try not to pounce on them. But my point is, once you know what to watch for, what to listen for, you can't help but see it. Here's another one way to look at it. Think about the first time you bought a car that you thought was unique. The first day on the road, didn't you see that same car everywhere? That's what I'm talking about. These things, when you train your brain, they jump right out at you. And if this isn't happening for you now, I promise you that is the way it could be. This doesn't happen magically. It happens with purpose. And if you start it right, you're in complete control of who you want to work with. Because as the screen says, you know exactly what you offer, who can benefit, and how they benefit. All right. I'm going to go a little deep into one other thing. Let's expand. When clients come to me, they're often in startup mode or scale up mode. If you're in scale up mode, it means you've been around and you want to go oomph to the next level. The first things we usually want to do is reverse engineer who or what have been the best clients and why. Okay, that makes sense. Then we lean into that because, like I shared already, like it or not, that's what you're good at. That is who wants and needs already what you have to offer. We'll look at who you don't like working with and why. But if you have a solid base already, we're going to build on that. If you're a startup, this is just as necessary because otherwise you're spending too much time talking to anyone and everyone instead of zeroing in on a tight, focused group of prospects. And yes, even if you're just starting out, we can figure that out. You know what you're doing. You have an idea who needs it. Be brave enough to limit yourself to that. It's good enough. It's more than good enough. And there's plenty of business out there for all of us. Find your tribe. What's your tribe of people? Find them. I have a client, and again, maybe they're on this call, who had a difference between what they were doing and who they could service well and who they really, really enjoyed and wanted to help. There wasn't a huge gap. That was easy for her to kind of bridge that gap and add a little product offering and a slight pivot that didn't change the essence of what she did so she could accommodate the rooms that she wanted to be in anyway. That can happen too. But don't overthink these things. There's plenty of business out there. Say no, say yes to what works. The sales and marketing term for all this, as you see on the screen, ICP, ideal client profile. It's your best accounts. It's the client you can help the most and really values you. But there's also an IRP, which you don't often hear about. I'm not here to invent concepts, but I Googled that and it doesn't jump out like ideal client profile. So I better get my IP lawyer to register that as a trademark or something. Anyway, I'm joking, but maybe not. This is, though, the ideal referral partner profile is. This is a big thing. Let me just say, I urge you to take away from this presentation because you have two ways to sell: direct to a prospective customer or find a partner who also benefits from introducing you to their network, their clients, their prospects. Okay. That's a referral partner. If you're selling business to consumer, this is a no-brainer because you have marketing efforts in place probably so individuals can find you online or on social media. But what if you could cultivate relationships with individuals who benefit from having you take care of their people and can bring you oodles and oodles of business all at once instead of you hunting it one by one? So to continue that, here's how it looks. Think of who's out there that already owns, services them, maybe like you or differently, represents them, or even whose job is to protect them. They're people who, because of what they do, need someone like you who can be next in line to take care of them. Or in some way, they are the last people to talk to them before the need for your service or product comes up. So it's kind of two ways of saying the same thing. They touch them last, they need to hand off the baton. And I'm going to give you some good examples to see if this fits your industry. Let's take the restoration industry. This is fresh on my mind from a conversation a week or so ago. After there's, let's say, a water damage to a building or a house, if your job is to clean up, there are people that will be there before you. For one, how about a plumber? Or how about an insurance agent or an insurance adjuster? That's just a few off the top of my head. These are people who will have stopped or addressed the problem before the cleanup starts. So you could somehow try to monitor every time there's a water loss, but that's going to be a lot of unnecessary work. It does work, though. I did this job for a year. I chased plenty of fires. I chased tornadoes. I know I did. I chased storms and I got business. But what worked best is being on the receiving end of a phone call from the person who was in line right before me. So instead of chasing as much, if you had trusted relationships in place who, once their work is done, would be more than happy to hand the baton off to you, then that's a key referral partner who is going to benefit. I can't stress this enough. It's win-win. Win-win-win. The client too. They can't leave, if you look at it this way, until they know someone's going to pick up where they left off. So what do I mean then when I say someone who owns or protects or represents your target audience? So I'm going to give you another story ripped from my own sessions. Let's say you're in the business of selling Medicare policies. So that's individuals that you're working with. Every year, an individual has to renew their old plan or switch plans. If they don't act, they're renewed. But that's your customer, let's say, and it's going to take a lot of work to find each and every individual who might need that guidance as they walk around, or walk through that annual decision. So with clever marketing, you can try to find people who are actively seeking this service. But have you met people? People aren't as active. You got to give them that oomph. That's the third time I've used the word oomph. I like it. Give them that oomph. And that's where this referral partner concept comes in, because they're passively out there unaware that you even exist. A good example of someone who is standing guard, if you will, over this group of people would be someone who runs a senior center or an assisted living care facility. It's their responsibility to take care of these individuals in every way. They might hear throughout the year about prescriptions that cost too much or areas of coverage that are lacking. If they could find a trusted partner who'll take the time and listen to each of their residents and help them find a solution or confirm that they already have the best policy, then you can bet they would be happy to grant that person access to their world. And for one of my clients, that's exactly how they grow their business each year. Instead of finding hundreds of clients one by one, a handful of these referral partners that trust them enough to open the door every year will find them hundreds of clients in total because they know it benefits them and their people. Win, win, win. So think about your business. Who is a referral partner that can open doors for you because they're a gatekeeper, caretaker, the last person to work with the client before it's your turn? There's a huge difference with all this between working hard and working smarter. And I have one more funny example from When Harry Met Sally. You remember the movie? Billy Crystal's character jokingly asks, why don't they combine the obituaries with the real estate listings? So and so is leaving behind a wife, a son, and a spacious 3-bedroom, 4-bath home. So it's funny, but think about it. It's technically not wrong. It's kind of the concept we're talking about. All right. 4F framework I laid out earlier. Let's move on. Focus, funnel, foundation, flexibility. Focus, putting aside for now, we're going to the funnel. This is making sure you are strategic in how you engage a prospect, guiding them in a way that isn't pushy or salesy. Because I know a lot of you don't want to do that, so that's good. And they don't want that. For this, I'll give you an example straight from my own business. I work with business owners, solopreneurs, salespeople to overcome sales obstacles, as you know, make sales easy, as we're doing in this webinar, making it something they can do even on their worst day. Not forgetting the theme of this. So we're building towards that. I'm not for everyone, but for those who are aligned with the way I view the world, it works very well for them. So how do I find my prospects? Well, first of all, they glow in the dark, as I shared. I know the triggers to look for, what to listen for, and the pains they might be having and sharing with others that make it clear that I might benefit them. And guess what? For them who know they need something, I glow in the dark. I may say something that makes it easy for that connection to happen because I'm on brand. At least I hope I am. Send me a message if I'm not. But not always does it work that easily. That's why we have to do a little bit of sales. So more about that in a bit. But anyway, once I have a prospect, either someone I met somewhere directly or as a referral from a trusted partner, I need to engage them. That's the funnel. It's the steps. It's the stages. It's the process. So it's pretty standard for all of us selling business to business or even most business to consumer to set up some kind of introductory call as the next step. Really a consultation to understand who they are, what they're trying to accomplish, and what's holding them back from hitting their goals. If that goes well, then back to me, I move to a very strategic step in my sales funnel that I developed a little from experience, but also from trial and error. I offer a free first session. I make sure they meet all my qualifications, including having a budget for my service. I learned to do that. I like doing, well, I'd do a free first session for the whole world if I could. But remember what we said? Anyone can't do that. There's only one me, so much time. And I owe it to my family. Don't make it about me to, bring home the bacon and fry it up in a pan. All right. If they have a budget for a service such as mine, the free session is just that, though. It's no strings attached, a complete assessment and diagnostic, guaranteed to point them in the right direction and give them plenty to think about. You guys are getting kind of this. It's just not customized all about you. But it's adding that step in my funnel was the biggest sales step that I made with this business. And why? Because without it, I had people who were interested but skeptical, as they should be. And as a result, they never pulled the trigger to work with me. My loss, their loss. Having that free session gives them the opportunity to try before they buy. For others, it was a way to ensure there was alignment between the two of us. Since we know we're going to be spending time together, they wanted to know it was going to feel right. And guess what? It's the same for me. I love that step because it's a chance for me to make sure it is truly a good fit. Without that strategic step, I was leaving money on the table and leaving behind great potential customers who just weren't quite there yet. It's an easy, pain-free way for them to move down my sales funnel without commitment and without me having to convince anybody to do anything. As a benefit, I also found a few prospects that were never going to be a good client, no matter what. This key step allowed us both to quit before we start. So let me give you one more example from my past in the staffing industry. I would meet with, let's say, a plant manager. They would love everything we talked about. I had a process using tools That's why it would work. It was the right person, and they'd go, man, this was, yeah, let's do this. Um, but the timing wasn't right. They simply didn't have a need that minute or that day or that week. But we both knew they were likely to need me because of the nature of what I was doing and who I was meeting with. Wasn't meeting with people where it was some new concept. They're in the business of having workers in and out. Okay. That was my ideal prospect. Very short version of that, but there was more to it, of course. But we both knew that 5 minutes from now, maybe a month from now, they were going to need me. But if I walked out the door, my odds of doing business with them dropped to who knows what. But actually, I knew it was 40 or 50% was my close rate if I walked out the door at that point. So, similarly to what I shared in my business today, I inserted a key step where we would schedule a second visit. Now, it's something we would inevitably do. That's what made it easy. If they said we have a need, there was due diligence and a handoff of the baton to my operations team. In that case, it's a recruiter. I wasn't the recruiter. And there are staffing agencies that do it that way, but you have to delineate between, now we're doing sales and now we're doing operations. So I would bring the recruiter in, we take a look at the positions, do the introductions, make sure everything feels good. And that was the next step. So we realized, and I'm using we because it really was, key people on my team that helped us see that. I shouldn't have said it was just I inserted the step, but we would do that step next, regardless of the need. I would thank them for their willingness to work with me. I'd call it a commitment to call their bluff. Hey, thanks. Thanks for your commitment to work with us. Well, no, hold on. I don't know about that. If they said that, there was a little more objections that we needed to uncover. But most of the time, like we're talking 90, 95% all the time, they would go, well, sure, that sounds great. Let's get ahead of it because they just told me that they were ready to work with me. So, yeah, this is a logical next step. Um, this, yeah, I don't want to go into the objections because there was that, and I think you can kind of take that. The concept's good, but there were occasionally times, I guess I will elaborate, where maybe they weren't going to call me and they were bluffing. But I'll tell you what, when that started to happen, we got better upstream with the way we ran a consultation meeting and sniffed that stuff out earlier of what might be the issue. But that is a reasonable expectation. And if I don't want to go into a tangent, but if you're not aware of what objections are, it's buying signals that you have to overcome and you're peeling away the layers. So you get one out of the way and then it's, yeah, but what if? This is good stuff. Don't get discouraged when that happens. So anyway, back to the story. We would come back in a few days doing what I described, and they would almost always say the same thing. Hey, I'm so glad you're here. I almost called you to move this meeting up. I need a couple of workers tomorrow. This is wonderful. So let's do this. Let's start working together. So think of your process. Where do you get ghosted? Where do clients disappear from your funnel? Where do they stall? Giving away something free is not the point of this discussion. Please don't take that. But what key step could you be adding that will guide them along in a way that isn't pushy and makes it very likely that if they move to that stage where it's almost a sure thing? I know for my clients, we're almost always able to find a way to move their prospects along. A common example is an assessment of some kind, like I described. Charge for it, though. I know clients that have created some little mini package. And, if it's a $30,000 thing you're offering, isn't there a $3,000 or a $300 thing you could do that's worth your time, profitable to you, brings them value? And it's not going to, don't worry if you're thinking this, it's not going to give them enough for them to run away with. Back to my free session, I guess I will admit there's a few people who thought this was good. I got enough. But now we're back to why sales fail. Number one, they were never going to be a client anyway. That's what you need to get better at seeing. All right. So do something where you can charge for them, or maybe it's a strategic step. I don't know your exact story, but this is what will move people along in that funnel. So reveal the need to them. And as we'll share later, convert that to a want, but get creative, reverse engineer. What has happened with the clients that I like and that have bought from me? What happens next is if they do say yes, get them to that stage, keep the momentum going. All right, moving on. There are rules to the funnel. Once you have a process, you do not skip steps. I don't have an image for that this meeting, but I bring it up all the time in my coaching sessions. taking the bait, falling into a trap. Boy, it's so easy to do, especially if you're desperate, if you're hungry, or if you really, really, really like them. I mentioned them really, really, really liking you before. And you get the whole, we don't have to go through all this, do we? Come on, you know me. Let's do this. Nope, 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 nope. Don't skip steps. The goal of each step, number two, is only the next step. You can have an eye on what happens after. You should. But the goal of that step is the next step. When I went to a meeting, my goal, the plant manager staffing meeting I described, my goal of that meeting was to get a tour scheduled, regardless, whether it happened when they had a need or without a need. So the third is it's okay to combine steps. This started to come up in my sessions, and I realized by all means do it. But just know, like I described before, if I was my own recruiter in the staffing industry and not just the salesperson, I could have gone from one step into the other and combined that. But you better know what step you're on and let the client know. Okay, are we good? We're doing this. Sales over. Great. Let's go into this part now. Just be very clear. Otherwise, you have skipped a step. There's also a fourth step I often add: move back up the funnel when necessary. And I'm going to talk about long sales cycles. If you're sitting there thinking, man, I can't close a deal on, just that visit like you could, Vic. And I've been in that world with the long sales cycle, but more importantly, my clients are. So I'm helping them through it. But move back up the funnel. If you are fooling yourself, falling into a trap of thinking that you have progressed to a step and really you're not, then you go back up and you do it over. Okay, we're progressing. I'm going to wet my whistle here. This is very, 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 very generic. It's not pretty because I don't want this out there being like Vic said, this is a sales funnel. No, this is just for discussion purposes. And you may have a sales funnel that's shorter. You may have one that's longer. We want to make it as concise as possible, but this is pretty standard. I'm not going to walk through all of it in detail yet because I'm going to come back, but understand at the top, there's a difference between leads and prospects. A lead is just that. Hey Vic, you should call so and so. All right, it's a lead. If I'm listening, I will put that in my funnel as a lead. But what is a prospect? I hope you're with me on what we've talked about. They meet your ideal client profile criteria. Okay, they're a prospect. That's worth moving to the next step. So, example of not skipping steps. You don't schedule an appointment with the lead that you have never looked at, scrutinized. So in between, there might be something as simple as a little quick phone call. Hey, I know you were eager to meet. Thanks for going to my website and scheduling a meeting or whatever. But I just haven't, just want to understand what I'm walking into here. That's a qualifying call. That's what we can call it. I don't care. Tell them it's a qualifying call. You should be transparent in everything you do if it works right and it benefits the client. So conversion of lead to prospect is the first thing in the standard funnel. So I told you I wasn't going to go into detail, but I just did. So anyway, once you have a prospect, you do the things that allow you to get to know each other, figure out how to work together, which shouldn't be unique and different every time. And then you come to an agreement. That's the gist of what this is. But here's another reason why the funnel is so important. You need to know where you're at with that prospect. But by doing so, you will learn where they're at. Here's what I mean. At best, you can deliver the right message. That's the targeted focus we talk about, to the right person. That's the right point of contact, but you need to do so at the right time. As I shared a few minutes ago, you can't control the timing always, but you can take control of it with the funnel. Identify those things that make sure the timing is right. Lean into the ideal clients that have consistent needs, so it's always the right time, and carry off of the previous conversation. Of course, you know now that you can also find referral partners who left the scene right before your work picks up. I know I'm repeating myself, but it's so important. This is what makes it simple. Find people who can hand the baton to you, and you're cutting through most of what consumes a salesperson's energy and joy, or lack thereof, that chasing and ghosting. Even if you have a 2-year sales cycle, the funnel can help you keep the prospect moving downward and not stalling. So I have a client with a very long sales cycle. They just can't help that fact. From the original spark of an idea to shipping something out the door, it can be years. But are there areas along that cycle they can help with and turn into revenue? Yeah, but they didn't always see it that way. So in their case, I'm not going to go into detail, but ultimately it's a machine going out the door. So once a machine goes to production, so all the planning and the idea and the issuing the POs and buying the parts, now they're building it. Many people on that sales team thought they had missed their opportunity since they're providing components and engineering support that already happened. But the clever sales manager that I work with instinctively knew that he had to get out on the production floor while they're building that machine on the job that he missed out on. Okay. But as we reversed engineered what he was doing, here's what we discovered. One, there were ample opportunities for things to go sideways. By him being there, they had support and an alternative solution because clearly what they started with wasn't working out as planned. And two, and probably most importantly, this gave him the ground floor onto the next project. Or what he really knows is that there are most likely parallel multiple projects going on. They're all on different timelines. By getting in the door now, he's not just waiting for that timing, but creating and engineering the timing on those other projects and being of greater value to them rather than in just one little way. His less sophisticated and educated competition was hearing, oh, you missed your window of opportunity. Think of me next time. Call me. And they were moving on to the next prospect, but not my client. So that's what we reverse engineered and spread across his team. And again, his team knew things, but what am I bringing here? Clarity and understanding. Why are you doing what you do? Systemize it. It makes that new hire easy and it makes your job easy. Because again, a lot of you, I haven't said it, you're like, I don't want to do sales. I just want to hire a salesperson. We're back to that road analogy I use a lot. You got to put the driver on the right road. Otherwise, what good of a driver is it? Here's something that we see a lot. Have you ever been on the highway? I know you have. And in your rear view mirror, you see that crazy person. Maybe it's one of you. I hope not. Be safe. But they're weaving, they're speeding. You know what they're doing. They're going to get there and they're determined to get there. I admire that quality, but come on, people, you're being dangerous. So they want to get there and they're doing whatever they can. And here's what happens next. Way down the road, you pull off the exit ramp, you get up to the red light, the stoplight, and they're right there next to you. So that is a perfect example of where the best driver in the best car still can't control the most important factor, the road and the road conditions. In this case, I'm an adequate driver. I'm getting there almost as fast as they are because the road. Now, if it's snow, construction, sitting behind a school bus, that's where you get clever with the road and figure out a better way to get there. And then again, doesn't matter as much who the driver is and what they're driving. Okay. So I hope that makes sense. Back to my client with the long sales cycle. He knows an ideal client when he sees one. He understands their world. He is learning and teaching his team and getting better at gauging the timing as he builds the relationship. So yeah, he'll be there when they're ready, but it's happening faster than he ever thought it was going to be, or mostly his team. He's learning what he's been doing instinctively, but his team is learning from him, some of which are brand new salespeople, that exactly that process behind what to do. So he may sit in his sales funnel at one stage for a little while, but he's created in between micro steps that govern his strategy. So more about that in a little bit. And let me continue to frame how this all fits so we can keep it as simple as I can. Next F, foundation. This is where I wanted to get today, and honestly, where I want to spend the most time with my clients. But just like with my clients, you can't start with the tools. Vic, I need a better way to do this. Vic, I need a better thing to say. Okay, and I'll help you with that, but I'm not willing to help customers jump to that step because if what's broken is something else that's more fundamental, none of this is going to help. So the foundation is the third F in my 4F framework, and it's simple. It's identifying or creating the tools that manage the funnel and keep the focus. So this is the scalable part of the sales process, that when a new salesperson shows up on day one, they know what their job entails. They understand what they do and how to do it. They're not winging it. They're not figuring it out slowly. And for you, if you're a business owner or just the only salesperson or whatever your story is, and you don't care about, not yet anyway, scaling or hiring people, this helps you. This is all about that road analogy that I share a lot. So bringing in the right person who can follow the process becomes more important than finding the right person and leaving it at that. So let me move along in my notes here. So this is what I'll say this, the best companies hire around is that person who's going to come in and follow the process and understand it and appreciate it. It's not someone who's going to necessarily just make sales, whatever that means. Hire someone who can best follow the process you have in place and utilize the tools. And be that person if that's you. Think about any other part of your business. When I was young and I showed up in my first job as a fast food worker at a Burger King, I wasn't asked to wing it. I wasn't figuring anything out on my own. Instead, they showed me the way things are done, armed me with the tools every new worker had, and made sure I did things the way they do it. I know there's a common myth that sales is different, but the fact is, it shouldn't be any different. IBM famously built a worldwide sales team on a singular way with a capital W to do things. If you had different ideas and you were on that sales team, you weren't meant for that job. They got you out of there, and that worked. They were the golden standard for sales for a long time until they weren't. I'll talk about that when I wrap up with the fourth F in my framework, flexibility. So anyway, here's the toolkit. What kind of foundational tools are we talking about? This is a common toolkit every salesperson should have. I'm just going to say that. I want to customize things, but there's so many universal rules, I guess. And this may be more, there may be more specific things based on your business, but I haven't seen a business yet that doesn't need these in some way. This is the integral part of what allows a business owner or salespeople to perform even on their worst day, because you're not winging it. You're not getting over that mental block of, okay, I don't even know how to start what I have to do today. The tools guide you through it. This is to a carpenter what a hammer, measuring tape, and I will point out Band-Aids are. Have it in your toolkit. They need them every day on every job. So let's walk through them quickly one by one. But I'm going to come back to a few things a little deeper. CRM, I think we all know what it is. It is a place to hold the information, the database, and it's very important to businesses that, everybody use it. And I agree, salespeople use it. It's just the way it is. Don't be a salesperson if you don't like putting in the data entry, because this protects the business. This is their property, their ownership. But it is also an invaluable marketing tool because there's automation. And that's not completely out of my realm, but I'm sales. I'm not marketing. An important CRM factor when you're deciding what CRM to use, knowing your future strategy. You can always change. Start with something now. I literally have a client that uses QuickBooks as a CRM because it'll put the email address and the name in there. Good enough for our purposes, but it's not going to be a powerful marketing tool. What is more important is the funnel management tool. And I'm going to talk about that next, so I'm going to skip it because that is probably the most important tool on here. So I will tell you, it's a tool that lets you know exactly where you're at in your process with every single prospect and customer and what you're trying to do next. It's that simple. If you don't know where you're at in your process, how can you move them through your funnel? So when I started in sales, that's what I was lacking. So even if I did a good job of finding ideal client prospects or ideal referral partners, they got lost in my CRM. And I think you all know what I'm talking about. So I would drive by a company and think, oh no, I never followed up with them. Or my boss would say, whatever happened to so-and-so that we met with last year? If these things are happening to you in any way, shape, or form, you're lacking a funnel management tool. So, all right, let me move on because I am going to come back to that. Where to start your process is, sorry, I lost my train of thought. I talked about the good meeting that I used to run. I'm going to jump down to 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth bullet point. Having a meeting guide is how you have a great meeting that's repeatable. It is how you guide your client without just having a nice conversation. Sales managers hear this a lot. Hey, how'd that meeting go? I had a great meeting, boss. Our kids play soccer together and we had a lot of fun and we connected and we're going to get together and play poker. Okay, that's great. You good job relationship building. But if you pull back the curtain, there's far more to it than that. And that meeting is that valuable time, their hour and your hour or whatever, to shift the needle. So I will often help my clients create that meeting guide that guides it. But I'm going to jump back up to bullet point 3. What allows that to happen is the messaging. And I wrote scripts. If that triggers you, okay, you don't have to use scripts. I love scripts. Maybe it's a checklist, but it's something that avoids you from walking out the door saying, why didn't I say this? Or what did I say to that other person that seemed to work that didn't work here? That is the messaging. And I'll give you a clue. The messaging is written directly from what you do and what the differentiators are and the pains you're solving. So, all right, I'm jumping around a little bit, but I want to share, I want to just make sure I touch each. I'm going to go into the 5 buyer map here before we wrap up in a little bit. And I think I talked enough about the referral partner profile. Building that is just as important as the ideal client profile, which isn't even on this list because it's fundamental. But I have to give special attention to the referral partner profile. But guess what? I'm not trying to complicate things. That's not me. But there is a referral partner funnel as well. And it should be pretty easy. But I have some clients where we have to walk through that because there's a way to engage them as well. And it's a sale. In the same way, it's a sale. And you don't want to skip steps and do things messy and wonder why it didn't work. Okay, I'm going to move on. All right, back to this little makeshift funnel. So, lead prospect, we talked about, having some kind of consultation. I put a tour in just as an example, but there's some sort of information gathering step that you might have before you can put together that proposal. If you're good and your business is appropriate, that was all one step above that. Then you sign some kind of contract, you implement them, and then they become a client. I have a client that I was talking to of mine the other day who seemed to suddenly become aware. I'd seen it for a while, but we have first things first. We're talking about everything else of getting clients, but they're leaving so much money on the table by not giving the attention they need to their current clients, expanding the business. I'll just say it, upsell. Do you want fries with that? Right? That's an upsell. But referrals, helping their business by getting referrals to them and then asking them for referrals to others. There's so much that can be done with a client. And again, you probably have had it happen. If you're not in touch with your clients and you think it's evergreen, think of my story about the owner that had things going on that nobody else knew in the company. You should have sold to that person. And if you haven't picked up the phone and called that person lately and said, hey, we haven't talked in a while, this is what I'm talking about. Like, you need to make sure that you're engaging them. Okay, but back to the toolkit. The funnel management tool is what I want to connect the dots on. Okay, I purposely made a very complex looking slide here, but bear with me. The funnel management tool could be a spreadsheet. And it could be that your CRM can do what this complexity here is easy. A CRM like Pipedrive is built around this concept. So what it is a funnel management tool is knowing all the little detailed steps. I'm kind of embarrassed now of this slide, but bear with me. My goal is to simplify. But every little step that has to happen to move your prospect along is what goes into your funnel management tool. I use a project management tool personally called Trello or Asana. You may know that because that's what we're doing here. We're managing a project. So every salesperson who's ever had a spreadsheet, this is what you're trying to do and what they're trying to do, is to have some way of really knowing where you're at. So let me point out one thing, though, before I dive into it a little more. This is one of those times where more is actually less. That's the complexity you're seeing. So think of your sales funnel. Prospect, get an appointment, schedule a tour. Let's just say that that's 3 steps. But without these breakdown in between the micro steps, then you have to think and do research and pull up emails to figure out where you're at. That's why more is less. It's the index finger test. See this finger I'm waving here? Unlike a CRM or combing through emails or digging through meeting notes to find out where you're at and what's happening, who emailed who, what was the last step, where'd you leave it with them, you should be able to manage your entire sales funnel and thus your sales day with your index finger. When I was out with the flu, index finger. I went and looked at all the column headers, and you start where the money's at the bottom of the funnel. And I did some activity. So index finger across all these headers. That's what these are, all column headers that align with your funnel, and then down. And you should be able to see exactly what's going on. Here's an analogy that I've been using. It's like a snake swallowing a rabbit. I know it's gross, but if you've ever seen a snake swallowing something, you see exactly where it's at. But that's the shape of your funnel. If you do something like this, I know when one of my columns with the index finger is too long and I start going, okay, wait, they're all in the same stage, but what am I really doing with each? Then I need to break it out. I have a client who has 25 steps in his funnel. That has been liberating. It went from lack of clarity, lack of understanding, not knowing exactly where they're at, to having 25 columns, which is easier. That's the point I'm emphasizing. So I wouldn't wish this mess on you on the screen, but let's go through just the top real quick. If your goal is to identify a prospect, get a meeting, and then schedule a tour. So you might have a lead, then you qualified them. So the action item is clear. Spend some time to match them up to your ICP. Then you slide that tile. If you're using Trello, it's like, boop, just drop and drag. It's amazing. Like, that was great. I just made progress. It's a great feeling. Then maybe you've qualified the company. You need to identify the contact names. And no, it's not going to be whoever you know. So we'll get to that, but you're going to slide it into that column, and that's where it's going to sit until you move it to, okay, I know who I'm contacting. Now I'm going to try to schedule an appointment. Then you move it down to appointment scheduled. You move it to appointment done. Now I'm in the tour info gathering schedule proposal. So you get the idea, but I will jump to the bottom. As a rule, you do not split your funnel. It doesn't go into other areas. It's a linear process, and that is so important. But once you have a client, you have options. Ask for referrals, schedule a check-in, demo a new product, invite him somewhere, schedule a quarterly business review. So that same client that I have that has 25 columns, he has fun with it. What's my strategy with this current client? And it changes daily, weekly, by the minute, based on his whim. I don't care. Doesn't matter. As long as you have a goal, the point is to reach out to that client and not lose track in thinking that you have a good thing going when you don't. So he'll move it around. Okay, today I'm going to try to sell him. And his say things like, sell him this product, sell him that service, do this, go visit them, bake them a cake. I don't care what your funnel is, but this is where the easy, while I'm out sick with the flu, I was able to go, okay, where am I at with this? Okay, send an email, boom, move them along. What a cathartic feeling. It was wonderful. Then I took a nap and went on with, they went on with their life. All right. We are starting to land the plane slowly. So make sure you have your seatbelts on and your seats are in an upright position. But let's take another look at this because I want to jump to the attack plan. This is the toolkit. So what is the attack plan? Well, I will tell you briefly that there are 7 ways to reach a prospect. And in fact, that's visualized on the next screen. So what I ultimately want to create for my clients, and I urge you to create for yourself, is a 10-step or whatever. It could be 11 steps, 9 steps, but it leverages the 7 ways to reach a prospect. Take a look in the middle there. There are some of the 7 ways. Those are 6 of the 7. Send them an email, phone them. You should call their cell. Maybe it's 2 ways for you, phone or office phone or cell phone. Send them a message, and maybe you break that down, a LinkedIn message, whatever social media. Then you have mail. Yeah, snail mail. A lot of people still use that. You have text. You have go visit them. These are all different ways. But if you are thinking, my God, that sounds like cold calling and the land of disappointment, not the land of joy, then that's the whole point of the 10-step attack plan. So I had a client yesterday, we did a session where we broke just step number 1, identify economic decision makers, into 3 sub-steps because it became, and I'm going to jump to that. Once you've identified a prospect, the first thing is identify the decision maker. And it should be an economic decision maker, ideally. But for them, they're like, how do I do that? And go to the website for the company. Go to LinkedIn. Type into Google. And these are strategies that I'll help you with. But again, this stuff gets easier once they start glowing in the dark and you know what you're looking for. So the next step after you know, and this is a pretty standard way to do it, without having to resort to the cold calling. Again, I want to emphasize, I'm going to show you some quick steps without having to do that horrible stuff that maybe you hate. So number 2 would be, do I know them? What it could be, and I have the same client I was just thinking of, we split that into 2 steps. I had to be very distinct. So think of it this way, 2 parts. Do I actually know them? Or we? Hey, you over there who's my partner, do you know this person? No? Okay. That's all I'm talking about. No scientific research, no Google. You know if you know someone. But then the second part of that is, am I connected to them on LinkedIn? Do I sit in an association or a group alongside them? And if so, then there's a way, of course, to get to that person easier than cold. The next step is, who can introduce us? LinkedIn makes that easy. If somebody's a second degree connection and you have a robust LinkedIn network, you can click on mutual connections. You can find people who you know would help you any day of the week, and you ask those people, Do you know this person? And they're going through the same sequence. And if they don't really know them, that might be the best thing you have. And it's still way better than going into the 7 ways. And of course, the next step in there is where or how could I bump into them? This isn't stalking, but this is, I noticed that 3 of my prospects are all members of this association. Why aren't I going to that association? Maybe I should go sponsor a lunch and learn there, but I'll just start by, letting them know I'm interested in being a part of it if they'll have me. And what can I do? Do you allow vendors in or what have you? So, one quick thing about the ways, and then we'll start to wrap up and land the plane. Everybody has a preferred way. You do. I'm a text person. So, you text me a message, you're probably going to get immediate attention. I say that to how many people are on the call. All right. If I get 25 texts, fine. I did it. And I'm okay with that. That's my way. Send me an email, though. I might be a little slower. Call me. Okay. You get the idea. But here's a quick story. I remember a company that I knew was a target. And I was back in those days, I mailed them some stuff. I was with a corporation and they had like sales campaign marketing things, but they'd get stuff in the mail. I would send them emails. I would leave voicemails. I wasn't able to get anybody on the phone much that I remember. But what I do know is the first time I got off my butt and went there, swear to God, this is a true story. They said, "Hey, everyone, Vic's here." And the rest is history. I had already caught their attention, but it was never going to happen if I didn't hit the way that works for them. So, all right, I think we might be, Rain, I should check in with you. I know people are starting to kind of trickle out. We still have 25, but what is our time for this? If you're there?
Down for 1:30.
Okay. All right. Well,
We do
with
have one
everyone's,
question if you'd like to answer it. Sorry.
yeah, let's take a breather and hear the question.
Okay. You should be able to see it, but the question is, in some sales situations, it seems ghosting is also caused by one, a mismatch in means of contact. Client wants text messaging or direct
Hmm.
access to a salesperson, or two, a client has brought an alternative and no longer needs your solution. How do you handle that?
Yeah, that's great. And I don't know if that question, I'd be curious to know if it came in before, you don't have to answer, but if it came in before I just talked briefly about the 7 ways, then there's your answer. People have
Yeah.
a preferred way, and you recognize that, whoever asked the question. So sorry, I don't see it on my end for whatever reason, but so you understand that everyone has a preferred way. But what we're really talking about, and I think I heard you go into the focus and funnel element in your question, if they're not already an ideal match and wanting and needing what you have to have, then you're falling prey to that why sales fail rule number one. They were never going to be a client. And if I have to meet with you offline and try to help you see how not everyone is always going to be able to be convinced, then I'll do that. But hopefully you see that. So that could be a symptomatic what is happening there as well. But the other thing is that point of contact. I think I kind of, or I'm sorry, the funnel. Well, the point of contact goes without saying. If you're targeting somebody that is not really going to make decisions, then it may not be a priority for them because no one told them to work on it. But for the economic decision makers, assuming what you are offering is always of value to them, get to the right person. But the funnel concept there is what could you be doing to move that along? Because without the clarity of knowing what your stages are, and even with it, it's easy to be caught in that stage called I need to schedule an appointment. But that's the point of the previous screen is do you have an attack plan that will allow you, and at the bottom I should have said repeat. The last step of whatever your 10, 12 step attack plan is repeat. Go back to the top because things change and their needs change. So maybe this is due for just a refresh, a revisit, or maybe you should be contacting someone else and maybe your long lost cousin is now the CEO over at that company and timing is right. So, all right. I hope I did justice. Rain, is there any follow up or anything? And if, okay, I see you unmuted.
Yes.
Anything else?
So we have a question regarding gyms. So for a membership-based business, specifically a gym, are there any fewer funnel steps that could work well?
So I got to wrap my head around that. Thank you for putting me on the spot. I love it. But as I put my framework into this, I should have an answer. So I always will say, like a broken record, you may know better than me already. Reverse engineer what has landed the bulk of your memberships? What has worked for you? What was the key step where engaging them made them go, I'm doing this? Or the reverse, where are you getting ghosted? Where are they disappearing? It's that rabbit moving through the snake. Like you can see what's going on with your prospects, and you're looking, maybe to shift analogies, it's a funnel. Look for leaks. So, what's happening? So, off the top of my head, again, the rule of thumb is you need to engage them in some way. So, if you're relying on marketing efforts to bring you people without it being an hour-long consultation in your world, what is it that you could be doing to engage them? But I'm going to take a guess that if your members like the gym, and I hope I heard the question right, that it's a gym, they love the gym. What comes to mind is you need to get them to see the gym, not virtually. That might work. They need to come to the gym. Why does the used car salesman or any car salesperson, sorry, not man, want to get you to sit in the seat? Because for a lot of people, that's the start of the real funnel. Get them into the seat and things happen. And there's other things that they want to do. Well, let's just do this. And it sounds innocuous, but look at what's happening. They're nudging you down into the next step of their process until eventually you're signing paperwork. So I hope that helped. And I should say, while we still have people on, and reach out to me. I would hope they can find me, Rain, as things go out. But find me. VikingSalesConsultants.com has my email address and phone number. But I'd love to have a conversation about this. So, all right. I hope that answered that. Rain, anything else?
We don't have any more questions, but if anyone does have anything before we wrap up, feel free to put it in the chat and we'll be able to answer them one by one.
Okay. And I keep saying landing the plane, so I'll just kind of go on a little bit longer. And if you've got enough, I know people have to get to life and hopefully go make some sales. But here's a concept that's important that comes a little deeper. Because again, I know if you followed me through this, you hopefully see the framework. And I really want to keep it that easy. But are there little things that I coach around the 4Fs? Yes. And here's one of them. This comes up during that meeting. And the meeting guide I speak of, I maybe didn't do justice to that, is creating something in some way for you and your sales team to engage that customer in that consultation and take them on a journey. So, what is the core of all that is the need, want. A bad salesperson will jump on the need, they'll pounce. But think about it. You're a trained professional, an expert. You see the needs everywhere. And it sounds like this in your head or out loud. Man, if I could just get in front of them, I know they would see. That's the need loud and clear and why you do what you do. You're helping people solve problems. But that need is so easy for you to see. It isn't easy for them to see. So the next need in the need, want conversion is to ask questions, not to tell, to get them to see the need. And then and only then can you turn that into a want. Another quick story. Think of your favorite retail store and think of my Amazon that we talked about. This is something that they struggle with in a big way. So they get you. Your favorite store gets you, whatever that is. It's your place, home improvement store where you buy cat food, whatever. And they're going to put things right, traps, right? But it's good. You want it. You're going to go, oh, I didn't know that existed. I want that. There's the need. They know what you need. They put that in front of you and hopefully you see the need. But here's what happens nowadays. We pull out our phone and we look it up on Amazon because they have broken down the barriers of, but I want it now. Well, if you can wait till tomorrow, and sometimes you can, it'll be here at a much cheaper price. And maybe it's a different color or whatever. So much that goes into it. So how does that store get you to buy it? They have to convert that to a want. And that's their challenge. And they do it. I always like to use Target. A lot of people I know who love Target, that's their happy place. Just push that cart around. No music plays in Target, different than other stores. So they are really knowing what's going on with that funnel. And it goes back to the question I answered. Get them in the store, and then the rest can happen. So, all right. And I have a crazy dentist story that I was going to share, but I don't have time for that. That would demonstrate the need, want. So I think we do need to wrap up. I'll kind of end with a concept. Perception is reality. Please know that. Your job is to see things the way your clients already see it. Ask questions. Don't judge. They don't know what they don't know. That's another favorite phrase of mine. It's your responsibility to take them there through that need, want conversion. And what I hope I've given you today is that framework and the idea of tools that can be built that will help you help them. And there is a third win. I love this concept. It's win-win when you help a client. But the third win is helping your clients help their clients. And if you can bridge that gap and talk to them in their world about how their pains are for retaining their clients, and some people don't go there, you are really doing your job well. So I think that's probably a good place to end. See, I've got so much more, but there you go. Not a whole lot more. We were there. It is the 4F framework. Please know who you are, know how you can strategically engage them. Let's get tools in your hands. They're out there and they're free to do this, and be flexible. We didn't talk enough about that, but for now, just grow your business. And we'll make sure later that you're not vulnerable to outside influences. So, okay, Rain, I think let's open it up to any last questions.
Any last questions before we wrap up? Feel free to put it in the chat. And just so you know, there will be a follow-up email that will contain the slides, recording, and any additional resources attached to this webinar, as well as Victor's contact. And I also want to bring to your attention that we'll also be hosting another webinar next week on the 28th. Victor, would you consider this one a continuation or a good standalone?
It'll be a standalone, but for those who have been on this and maybe both, I promise you a different way of looking at the same thing, as well as some additional stuff, including that dentist story. It's a great story. Let's talk about dentistry. They're selling every day. I want you to look at it through their eyes. So, all right.
All right. Well, if we have no more questions, thank you for your time, and everyone look out for our email and have a wonderful day.